Welcome to The Leaders Who Care, a podcast powered by Dynamis Group. We are here to give the stage and support to those committed to create a positive and lasting impact, way beyond the profits and margins, the leaders of the world who care for others and serve a bigger purpose. Join us on the journey of creating a better, more caring world. And now to your host, Marian Temelkov.
Hello, everyone. You make me laugh, Ryan, right from the get-go. You were just talking about the ditch the act earlier, and thank you for helping out. But what a great way. Well, welcome, Ryan. It's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. You're somebody who's actually making such a profound difference, and spreading a lot of goodness and advice of not only people who are on the podcast, but also many leaders. So. Thank you for joining, and welcome on The Leaders Who Care. You're someone who really wants to make a difference. I want to hear all about your valuable advice about ditching the act. And, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you in a few words, Ryan, and what inspired you to do what you do today?
All right, there. How much time you got? Oh, but it's great to be here. I'm excited. You guys sold me on the title, and I think that sometimes with the attention span that everyone has today, we read titles, and the fact that you're talking about leaders who care, I'm like, that sounds great. And on top of that, when I looked at your logo, you've got, people in a boat and they're like doing this thing. So the only thing you're missing is a sail, but we can work on that later.
I love it. You'll tell us more. And thank you for helping me earlier. Ryan was just helping with the microphone earlier, and believe it or not, we've been doing quite a lot, but we always can have a more help with someone like you. So thank you, and I love what you do.
Yeah. Well, let's talk real quick. I'll get to my story in just a second, but it's all about paying it forward. And I was actually on a mic. I was on location in a conference, and I had a podcast that I was a guest on. So I had my little remote set up, and I brought my microphone with me. And before we started, the guy was like, let me see your microphone. So I panned down, and he said, I'm sorry, but your microphone is backwards. And I was like, really? And I turned it around, and then it was all of a sudden on. And it was so cool of him to call me out. And it's just an example of sharing because you care. Like if I find a typo on a website, I'll share it with the person just because I care. If I see something that's wrong, I'll share it because I care. And so I think at the end of the day, a lot of what I do, the content that I share, the concepts that I share, my life lessons that I share, it's because I care. And if I can make the mistake and help you avoid making the mistake, then the net mistakes are a lot less, though we will always continue to make mistakes, and that's how we grow. So there's a full circle there.
I love it, Ryan. And by the way, that's exactly our vision and purpose is, on The Leaders Who Care, we're on a mission to find and give stage to leaders who care from every corner of the world. And it's not just a podcast, but a platform, and we're doing a number of other activities beyond that, to spread that culture and unite, and to make, obviously, to positively influence the world, to make it a better one. It's fantastic already. I think we live in the best time. We're just talking with Ryan earlier in our little talk before the podcast. For those of you who don't have a podcast, it's typical to have like 5-10 minutes beforehand. And we're just discussing with Ryan how lucky we are that we live in today's world where we can travel, we can see each other, we can share wisdom so quickly, and we don't have wars, people dying outside, as Ryan was saying.
Fingers crossed, depending on when you watch this show, right? That might not age very properly.
But many wars. Well, let's say that you're right. Well, thank you for clarifying. we don't have, let's say, hopefully we minimize that, because naturally we're predisposed to wars. I think from looking at the history, you're saying, right, you're watching even the UK of how many wars and for how long.
My wife and I are watching this British Castles like Netflix documentary, and it's fascinating. I love the castles. I feel like I would have been a knight in probably rusty armor, but they're talking about these wars that sparked and then spanned for 100, 200, 300, 400 years. And so my wife and I are in bed and we're like, we are living in luxury. The fact that we actually have free will and that, however many restrictions a pandemic can put on a world, like we're still here. Like the quality of our life compared to the past, if you look at the mass amount of people, we're so privileged. We like to connect with you in real time online and share this with whoever wants to see it. It's just fascinating where we're going. And I'm super bullish on Web3. I think we're going to go from scrolling to strolling. So when we talk next year, we'll be holograms. Maybe we can do this from Mars, a virtual Mars. I mean, I think with the metaverse and 5G connecting everything, as long as we have the right mental shift and the right paradigm shift to continue to look at things differently, then we'll continue to innovate. And it all comes down to innovating with information. And so we're here to share some information. So let me tell you a little bit about my backstory.
I love it.
Everybody has a backstory, and I think that it's important we remember that. We're often asked, well, tell me your backstory. And then typically it's like, well, I did this, then I was successful at this, then I had this win, and then I did this, and then I did this, and I was awesome at this, and I got this job, and then it's like we tend to go back and we tend to see and share the good stuff that happens. And when we do that, it's like a highlight reel. And I'll even go one step further, and it feels almost like a highlight reel, because we have this tendency to want to share stories of our past that people might like, that they might resonate with. And what I've found is that looking back on my life, there's probably a lot more, if not even dips, as there are peaks. And so my own little economy, the ups and downs. So I'll share with you a couple of the things that didn't necessarily go right, but that really shaped who I am. And I think that's a quicker than just listing the successes. I think
that's often more useful, to be honest.
It is.
Because somebody says, tell me the things that didn't work out or we can improve.
Yeah.
Not the things that are perfect.
We have a lot of that to go on. So when I was growing up, the unique part of my sort of family upbringing is that I was raised by educators. So both of my parents were teachers. They both became vice principals. They both became principals. They both taught at college. So my entire life was on a cycle. It was the school year and then the summer, like as a family. So that was pretty cool. Every summer we would go to Catalina Island, which is an island here that's about 26 miles off the coast of...
You mentioned you're going there next week.
I'm going there tomorrow.
Or tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah. This little picture of my backdrop here, this is me sailing my little laser over there, towing my wife in a blow-up unicorn. But that's where I'm going in the next tomorrow, actually. So I did really well in school because my parents basically said, if you don't do good in school, then you're not going to get to go to Catalina. And so my whole life as a kid was do really well so you can become rewarded with, all the fun things that you want to do that's not school. But the problem that created for me, especially in middle school and elementary school, is that I disappeared for 3 months out of the year. And I'd come back with bleach blonde hair and, lots more freckles. And I was kind of an outcast because you have friends during the school year and everybody has fun during the summer, but I was never really part of that. And so at an early age, I was kind of an outcast. It was hard to make friends. I didn't feel like I belonged. Now, granted, I had a couple like best friends. We all have those sort of best friends, but I just didn't feel that connected to all of the kids. And having freckles made me kind of an outcast. And so I became kind of sullen. Like I was just, I was a little bit bitter. And I had a couple kids that kept trying to beat me up and, never got picked for the basketball team. So my mom bought me a basketball. I brought the basketball to school and see if anybody wanted to play. And they're like, no, we already have a basketball. So I learned that having a ball doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get into the game. And I think that a lot of what my early childhood was searching for belonging. And so I think that it's something I still seek. And sometimes with the businesses that I work with or the clients that I work with, I really look at that relationship as something where I make sure it's the right client, that we belong together. I've made too many mistakes in working with the wrong people or taking on the wrong client. So that's a theme where I've learned, and I continue to learn, to really try to choose the right people to work with and to do business with. And when you find that right match, it's awesome. So that's kind of from my childhood. Ironically, I ended up being the senior class president in my high school, voted by the same kids that I didn't necessarily click with in elementary school. So it was kind of a fun full circle.
That is a what a growth.
Yeah. And I led a double life. You know, I was sort of a nerd because I was in all the AP classes and there was a certain set of kids. And then I would also skateboard and smoke pot and sneak some alcohol and have fun. And so I had this kind of duality where I considered myself a nerd, not a dork. So I don't know if those English words resonate with you, but a nerd, I was proud to be a nerd, but I didn't want to be an uncool nerd, which would be a dork. So I really felt like, for me, being sort of a hybrid worked out for me.
I love it. I've never heard that kind of expression before, so thank you.
So when I went to college, I had an opportunity to get into a number of schools that I had to pick from, and I ended up going to University of California, Santa Barbara. I wanted to be near the ocean, and I wanted to be at a place that was just beautiful, because I figured wherever you go, whatever education you want, and this is a lesson not only for college, but for courses that you take now or professional development, you get out of it what you put into it. And so when I looked at colleges, or even now, when like I'm learning about the blockchain, I'm learning about these things, I'm taking courses, I'm digging in, I'm into NFTs, I'm learning, I know that I will get out of it what I put into it. You can't expect a really good school to give you a good education. You have to get in there and learn it. And I think that's something that I really continue to remind myself about, is that I looked at all colleges the same, because I knew that how much I learned depended on how much I showed up, how much I studied, how passionate I was about that. So I just picked the prettiest location closest to the beach. I went in undeclared, which here in the US means I didn't pick a major. And that gave me an opportunity to really like explore all kinds of different fields. And I ended up getting 2 majors, one in business economics and in dramatic art, theater, drama. Before college, I didn't even know it existed. And I accidentally stumbled into it, and I found so much passion in communicating in live, like just the live communication that could happen, the willing suspension of disbelief, the, audiences and the live people, like it just got me. And when I realized with business how much of the presentation side and the communication was missing, that's really, I think, where things settled for me, is that I took the performing arts and the strategy of direction and stage lighting and blocking, and then combined that with my excitement about business. And that's where I really found my groove. Because when you can make business more entertaining, or when you can make business more clearly communicated, and you can do it in a way that, translates better, or people can get it better, that's the problem that I found that I was meant to solve. And there's nothing more difficult than making things simple, and there's nothing more exciting than trying to whittle things down to their core. And I think that in my journey, I've been very successful in the startup world. I've been just as unsuccessful. I've been involved in some nasty litigation that's come back to bite me in the ass, which has taught me lessons. And through all of it, I think no matter who you are, no matter what stage, if you can level up the way that you communicate with your team, with your wife, with your friends, with your colleagues, with your customers, with your investors, for me, the way you communicate is really the way that you accelerate any type of growth. And so I look at people at the root of all business. I think people want to do business with people. People don't want to do business with businesses. And so I've found myself levitating towards being most excited about helping people market themselves.
I
It's
just
called
have a
personal
point
branding.
here. When AI comes in, I just had a thought. Would AI want to do business with people? And just kind of machines and people.
Yeah,
But
no, I mean, I think machines try to make business more relatable, right? They're trying to search through all the data. They're trying to give you better information. They're trying to give you information that you're interested in. And that speaks to the more you can get the core messaging to that core client, the more they might resonate with it. So anyways, that's, as a kid, I really felt like I didn't belong. I've sort of grown into my own, where I feel like that connection with people is one of the most important things that I value. And how you communicate with other people, how you communicate with clients, how you create content is how you get people to know you. And I think that if you get people to know you, like actually get to know you, then they might like you. They might not. But if you let them get to know you and they do like you, it sets the foundation for trust. And you can't download trust. So I enjoy helping executives to build trust through content. I'm passionate about higher education. I work at the University of California, Irvine, and help faculty communicate with students, help the university communicate with students. And at the end of the day, if you can level up your communication, you can accelerate whatever it is that you're doing.
And thank you for sharing that and reminding us how important is this. Someone said to me, and many from very different directions, and you're validating again, is that communication is a source of pain. Communication is a source of great joy and success if you can master it, as you said. So I think there is two important points here that you share. One of them is, you mentioned relationships with people, which you need to understand human psychology and how people operate. And then the other one is, you need to understand how to communicate and level up or invest really, one of the best things you can do is learn to communicate well and effectively, which is not that easy, Ryan. It's not so. I'd love to hear about your advices and talk about helping a lot of leaders and what is and that's directly linked, and just going about what is authenticity, in leadership. What is authentic leadership?
I think so. There's a couple of questions there we can digest. When it comes to communication, we'll talk about that real quick, and then we'll talk about authentic communication.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions that I enjoy asking people, whether it's an individual or just on a large scale, if I'm speaking to a crowd, I'll ask them, do you consider yourself a public speaker? So you, for example, do you consider yourself a public speaker?
To be honest, I haven't done much public speaking, but I believe I'm passionate about it. I believe I can do it.
But this is a game show. You got to choose it. You got to choose an answer. Are you a public speaker or not?
Yes. Let's say yes.
Okay. But it's funny because initially you're like, I haven't been really, I'm just not. Here's the deal. If you speak in public, then you are a public speaker. It's a scientific fact that you cannot argue either.
Yeah. You speak on the street, you're a public speaker.
You speak in public, you're a public speaker. And so the thing that I find people can make the most progress with the littlest amount of effort to increase their communication skills is what they tell themselves, is their mindset.
Yeah.
Because if you say, "Oh no, I'm not a public speaker." No. Life is full of stories, right? The stories we tell each other, but also the stories we tell ourselves. And we don't need to get into limiting beliefs, but it is a real thing. Your brain listens to the inner talk. And if you go, I could never be on a podcast. I could never be a podcast host. I could never do that. Then your brain, through a process called cognitive dissonance will actually take what you think and look for data that supports it. So if you tell yourself, no, I'm not a public speaker, I'm not good at that kind of stuff, then the next time you might be presenting that you're forced to, and you stumble and then get nervous and shake, then your brain is gonna be like, I told you, you're not good. Look at your hands are shaking. You're not a good speaker. Okay. So one of the best things that you can do is be like, I am a public speaker. I'm working on it. I'm not as bad as I think that I am. Maybe I just need to try it a little bit more. And the best way to get better at blank is to do blank more. If you want to be a better writer, write more. If you want to be a better speaker, speak more. If you want to be better at drawing stick figures, draw more stick figures. And so sometimes the equation is so simple. Oh, I want to be a better communicator. Okay. Join Toastmasters. Get more stage time. Practice talking with your wife. Talk to your teddy bears. Practice, practice, practice. And so I think that that's the one thing I would leave people with is if you speak in public, then you are a public speaker. It's a scientific fact that you can't argue either. So once you give yourself that space and that permission, then you'll take more opportunities. You won't be as hard on yourself, and you will actually get better.
And you just reminded me of something very useful here, which is whatever you believe in, you are right. If you believe you are really good in something, then you're right. And if you believe you're not, you're right too. And you'll find, as you said, you'll find the data to support that argument.
Yep.
You get better, however, in anything that you continuously do or for over a long time, and especially when it's done even more consciously, as you point out, and if you're really passionate about. But I guess on one end, your advice is very useful to everyone who is hesitant about themselves and their speaking abilities. They just need to do more of it, and they'll come better and better. And sometimes being humble or not as clear a communicator is even more powerful in cases. So
because that can come across authentic, right? You don't have to
It's-
be a polished person to come across authentic. You just have to be up there. You have to be taking risks. You have to be vulnerable. And that comes across as courage. I was talking with a friend last night, and they actually shared a quote from Jane Fonda. Okay. Do you know who Jane Fonda is?
Go on.
Okay. My wife's laughing in the background. My friend said that Jane Fonda once said, and she's a health person. She's like back in the 80s or 90s, probably 80s. She was like, the fitness, like, hey, let's get fit. Let's work out. Jane Fonda, all the videos, the Jane Fonda videos. When it comes to health, she would say, you are what you've done for the last 90 days. So how are you right now? Well, how much have you worked out in the last 90 days? And you look at that 90-day period, what you've done beforehand, and that's who you are. And so I was sharing with him, that makes me think the same thing about your brand or your communication skills. Your communication skills are as good as what you've been doing the last 90 days. Your brand is what you've been posting the last 90 days. And so we also have to give ourselves permission to know that it just doesn't happen like that. And so it's the choices, the habits, the things that you do that become part of your routine over a period of time. That's where you'll start to see results.
Excellent. Oh, God.
So let me tell you now, we talked about communication. Let's talk about authentic communication. I hinted on it a little bit, which is actually getting up there and doing it. So many people are fearful of public speaking. So many people are nervous about speaking. If you actually take the stage and you are a little nervous, that's a relatability point with everyone else in the audience because they feel that same way. So the first, I would say, tip to authentic communication is having the courage to get up there, whether you feel like you're confident or not. And if you're not confident, you could start with, well, I have to be honest, I'm a little intimidated right now looking at everybody. Ha ha ha. They'll just all of a sudden relate, and then they'll be there for you. People forget that the audience is rooting for you. And when you look at the opportunity to communicate in that way, by taking the opportunity, just getting up on stage is the start to being authentic. As far as I'd say that the second thing to consider when you're looking at what is truly authentic communication, it is based on your experience. Okay. Let me ask you another question, and I kind of set you up. This is a softball. Do you think people will resonate more or connect with or relate to your experience or your expertise? What do you think you're going to connect with people more on, your experience or your expertise?
I think your experience.
I 100% agree. But as a default, sometimes we feel like we need to talk about our expertise. We are on stage, we're brought to a podcast to talk about what our book is, or we're supposed to give a talk about our lifelong work or in representing our company. And so we feel sometimes that we have to be this expert. So imagine you go up on stage and like, so I am the expert and I'm going to tell you about this, this, and this. And the audience is just like, oh, come on, somebody else who's just telling me what to do. Your expertise comes from your experience. And your experience is you actually going through something in real life, and it might not work, and then you learn. Or it might work, and now you can actually speak from experience. So step one to be an authentic communicator is to actually get up there and put yourself out there. Step number two is to share your experiences. Because when you tell a story, people want to listen. And when that story has a theme, or that story has a moral, or that story has now I'm telling you this story because all of a sudden it becomes more relatable. So instead of selling, try storytelling. And instead of trying to share your story of success, share what went wrong and let people see themselves in your story. So get up there and communicate, put yourself out there, tell stories, focus on your experience. And then I would say the third thing is, remember, it's not about you. It's about the audience. And if you combine those three things together, then you're showing up, you're entertaining people with real life stories that they can connect with. And then it's not about you. It's about what value you can bring to them to help them. That same, you're sharing with them stuff because you care about them. And I think sometimes what happens is that as a speaker or as somebody who's trying to put themselves out there as a leader with their thought leadership, don't want this to come across wrong, but sometimes you get selfish. If you worry about pacing, that's kind of being selfish. If you worry about, am I going to sweat through my armpits right now? That's you being selfish. If you're worried about messing up what you're going to say, it's kind of selfish. And so the less selfish you are, who cares what I look like? My hair is a little bit funky right now. Or like, oh, I got to. If you don't worry about that as much, then you're really caring about the audience. So sometimes when people say, I'm just so nervous, the reason you're nervous is because you're selfish. You don't want to look bad. And so if you over time can sort of get over that, then the focus then becomes on the audience, and then they connect and resonate with you. And there will be a huge line of people afterwards that want to talk with you because they feel like they've connected with you. That's what I got for you on authentic.
Oh, this is fantastic. Really. What do you and listening to this is some amazing lessons. What a great perspective, Ryan. I honestly, it's kind of shifts so much because it encourages people actually to. It's if you care, you're not going to be selfish for yourself. So, and that means I have to have those worries. So it's a, really looked at a great way, great perspective. And I'm just thinking of what is the problem of, with leadership today, and really an authenticity. I'm just trying to kind of see for leaders, is it being selfish because they're worried what they're going to say, or what are your thoughts on
So
that?
I think that some of the biggest challenges for leaders to come across authentic can be sometimes rooted in the idea that they are trying to live up to some sort of standard that they think other people expect of them.
Mm-hmm.
I am a CEO. Therefore, I have this sort of perception of what other people are going to think about me. But strip the title away and you're still just a person. And I think that sometimes ego gets in the way. I think maybe the size of the paycheck could impact the way that maybe you feel your worthiness. And as one famous rapper once said, sit down, be humble, right? I think that we have this pressure to act as if, to fake it until we make it, to exude this success. And one example, if I'm on Clubhouse, and I'm not on Clubhouse a lot, but if you're there, you can find me. When people, I love hearing the introductions. When people give their like, hi, my name is Ryan Foland. When people sometimes introduce themselves, they're like, yeah, I'm a 7-figure entrepreneur. I do this and that. I'm an investor. I did it. And you're like, dude, get out of here. Get over yourself. Like, I think that if you're authentic, you can maybe talk about what you do for fun or what you're passionate about or something like that. It doesn't have to be about the possessions that you have, right? It doesn't have to be about those material things. And I think that as leaders gain status and as leaders gain titles and as leaders gain income, you have to remind yourself that it's like those things don't matter. When you're on stage and you're communicating, like, you're a human being. We are the exact same. If anything, I value your time because I want to learn more about what's going on with you and how I can help serve you. And instead of just me saying, this is what it is. So when I work with executives, one thing that I'll point to is their LinkedIn bio. If I were to go read your LinkedIn bio right now, is there anything in there that's going to let me know that you're human? Or are you just talking about year-over-year sales and what you do and then the success you've had and then what you do and how awesome you are and what you do for your clients and da-da-da-da? Do you like yoga? Do you like to read? Do you like to sail? Do you like the ocean? Do you like hiking? Do you like redwoods? What do you do when you're not working? And I think that the more you incorporate what you enjoy doing outside of work, the more it sort of like brings you down to everybody's level. And I think that's a quicker way to have people get to know you. So I think the selfishness will stop you from being an authentic communicator. But I think that being humble and looking at everyone as the exact sort of same, that everybody deserves the same respect, everybody deserves the same amount of time, then it's not like you up on this pulpit that's speaking to everyone. It's like this larger conversation that you just might happen to be speaking because it's your turn for the time of a keynote. And then afterwards, the magic happens. I love talking with people after the talk. And it's a larger conversation. So just like the conversation we had before we hit play, or before we hit record, and just like the conversation that we're going to have after we hit it, right? I feel like we have this kind of like they're watching us have this conversation, but I'm having this conversation with you. Sorry, but I don't really care as much about anybody but you right now because we're here in that moment.
And by the way, that's so important. Nowadays, I found exactly that giving somebody your undivided attention, Ryan, is a gift, is a precious.
It's a currency. You pay for it.
Absolutely.
You pay attention.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why a lot of the tech companies are fighting for our attention. They want it.
And you know when you're talking to somebody and they're not paying attention or they're looking at their phone like
very often. I mean, I don't know if you notice that a lot with people, but when you have their full presence, it's also noticeable. Say, wow, what? It's probably more uncommon nowadays because everybody's busy with so many things.
And so I've given 4 TEDx talks, and so my
Yeah.
third TEDx talk was about the power of the pause. And so this is something that is not theoretical. This is very practical. This is something that you or anybody listening can literally start doing today to improve the way you communicate more authentically. Allow more space. Let the person talk, and when they're done talking, just wait like 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. They might keep talking. They might not be done. There was this fascinating linguistic study that was done over the entire globe. Team of scientists. They went all around and they observed and even brought people in and had them have conversations. Talk, 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 talk. And they measured the time between when this person stops talking and this person starts, and then this person, the distance, the time between when you stop talking and then I start talking. And it was a classic full bell curve. And on the far end of the fastest, you had the Chinese that were just speaking like there's hardly any difference between chip, 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 chip. And on the other side, you had Norwegians. There was this big long pause. Then the next person would talk. Then the next person would talk. But on average, the time between you speaking and me speaking is 0.2 seconds. Okay? To give you reference, watch my eyes. When I blink, that's 0.3 seconds. So faster than a blink of an eye on average across the world, as soon as somebody's done talking, poof, the next person starts talking. And as soon as they're done talking, poof, the next person starts talking. And there's a few problems with that because your brain takes between 0.4 to 0.6 seconds to calculate words, put them together, formulate it, and then say it in a sentence. So the math is showing that on average around the globe, people are not listening to others because if the time between the conversation is 0.2 seconds, but it takes your brain 0.4 to 0.6 seconds, then what's happening is that I'm listening to you until I decide what I'm going to say next. And I'm just waiting, not really listening, waiting. As soon as you finish, I'll jump in. And I call it a pounce. You jump in there. And if you just increase that time, let the person finish talking, wait a second, actually think about it, formulate your reply, listen to what they have to say, think about it, reply. All of a sudden, it's not this competition for who's taking the space of talking. There's actually like this give and take. So be a pauser, not a pouncer. If you just create a little bit more space, it will open up your ability to communicate. And try it with like your friends, your wife, your husband, your partner. Let them talk. Don't jump on it. Make sure they finish. Think about it and answer. It's amazing what happens when you give each person a little bit of space to talk, and it's not like that.
I love it. We have a few comments here that interesting, and I want to thank Andreas Kuhnen for first of all sharing about his own story, and when you shared early on. Telling myself my story keeps me grounded, especially on days I'm being grateful, makes me think about where I came from nothing. So well done on making that, Andreas. That's a great reminder.
And here's it. So I have a question for you. Have you been at a low point where you've had nothing?
To be honest, I've never been in a low point where I had nothing, but I've been in a very low point where I have less than, well, it depends how you define nothing, because if you
so take nothing out of it, but this idea is like you've had a low point, right?
Yeah, and
I've had a low point.
Andreas,
we've all had these low points, and so revisiting that really does help to humble And when you have the courage to share that with somebody else, like that was courageous for him to share just that. That makes him more relatable. Now he and I have a connection based on the fact that we've both had those lows, and we all have lows.
Absolutely, and that's, I think, what matters is how you bounce back and recover, and that's really important. But really, and when I say how do you define lows or nothing, does it count when you borrow a lot of money and you have to return them back in a 6 months or 9 months period?
It does.
Very quickly. So if that counts, yeah, definitely being probably below nothing.
So here's my comment for this. Let me see if I can make this work. This was a recent stick figure drawing. You can't have a comeback without a setback. And life is full of setbacks. And so if you accept that and you acknowledge it, it's just more common ground. And here's the last thing I'll say about that. When you have the courage to admit that things aren't going great, it makes people want to help. We all have these like, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm great. How are you? Oh, I'm good. Good, thanks. You good? Yeah, we're good. Things are good. You had a good weekend? Oh, it was great. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Well, let's get going. Versus, hey, how you doing? I'm great. Great. How are you doing? Actually, I had like a weird nightmare last night and I didn't get the greatest sleep. All of a sudden you're like, I haven't slept nice better. And you're like, oh, well, try hot tea before you go to bed, or watch British Castles before you go to bed. As soon as you say like, hey, I'm not great, I'm like, or I'm kind of dealing with a personal challenge, or my mom just fell down the other day, or, I'm struggling with this thing that I'm trying to fix on my boat. All of a sudden it's like, oh, really? Like this is something real. This is what I do in that situation, or you should read this book, or you should watch this talk. When you're a little bit vulnerable and honest, it gives people the opportunity to support you and to help. And if you're a leader and there's nothing wrong with you, if every time I talk to you, you're like, I'm freaking awesome. I'm awesome. You're like, I'm not going to like, there's nothing to relate on. But if that leader talks about how they're having a challenge at home with one of their kids, and if I have a kid, now we're bonded, we're connected, we can talk about that separately. So I think that
this is, sorry, Ryan,
no, go for
I'm just trying to practice the pose, but
I know it's hard.
I'm still kind of getting there.
We'll work on it together.
on that one here, and I was just so excited about the things you're talking about, and it's so meaningful. I'm just grateful that you're sharing, because so much value. Absolutely, people don't like when you are so full of yourself, like you come across so perfect, because we all have our challenges. We have the price to pay, and we may be successful and do a lot of great things, but there's price for it. When you want something, you need to understand what is the price. How do I need to serve to deserve that of what I want? And it's not easy. You have to change or grow massively, and that could be very painful. That could be affecting your family or relationships, and that is important.
But once you start to share that, even little, just, I mean, you don't have to go emotionally throw up on somebody. But here's a challenge to everybody. The next time you have that water cooler talk, you're like, hey, how was your weekend? Instead of saying, great, try to find like one small stupid thing, like, oh, you wouldn't believe it, I spilt my coffee all over myself. Or like, oh, I was driving and traffic was terrible. Or, if it would just stop raining for a minute, then that would be great. So something that is not, I'm good. And watch what happens. They will actually want to share how they can show how they care. That's all I gotta say.
It's amazing, because I'm going to ask you about tools and methods of really how to make that happen, and how really leaders can obviously build their personal brand, and what are the tools and techniques. But you've been sharing a lot of value around this topic already. And just to wrap up on the leadership side, when it comes down to the personal brand, what are the benefits for leaders to build a personal brand in a public, become a public figure, I guess, and work on it?
I'm going to answer the question by the opposite. Okay. So the reason why you shouldn't build a personal brand is if you want to stay stagnant in your career. A reason why you shouldn't build a personal brand is so that people don't learn about you who have never heard about you. A reason to not build your personal brand is if you just don't want to make more money than you're making now. Another reason to not share your personal brand is if you don't really want to connect with communities that you never knew existed. Another reason to not build your personal brand is if you literally don't want to learn anything new. And so the flip side of that is that by building a brand, you're building your professional development, your ability to communicate, your ability to write, your ability to make videos. So you learn new skills by putting yourself out there. I mean, I'm being introduced to an entirely new community through this podcast. And so by me showing up, I'm able to then tap in, like, this might be a butterfly flap that connects me with somebody that I never knew before, that could end up being a client, could be a friend, could be a colleague, could be something like that. It has never been harder to get a job, find a job, keep a job, get the job that you want. And so by building your personal brand, if done correctly, you're just making more opportunity for people to get to know you. And if they get to know you and they like you, they might trust you. And if they trust you, that could lead to a job. That could lead to a partnership. That could lead to an investor. And if you have a personal brand, you're able to progress your career. You're able to be seen as somebody who has experience to justify your expertise. Now, that's authentic personal branding. There's another way to do it, which I tried, which is faking it till you make it. And that doesn't work long term. There are people who take pictures in front of objects that they don't own and make people think that they have more money than they do. There are people that might dress and buy expensive belts and shoes, but literally not have enough money for rent. There are people that will finance thousands and thousands of dollars of watch so that people give them more credit. And if you're faking it, you're really not building a personal brand. You're building a brand that you think other people want to see. And who you are versus what you think people want to see, the delta is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until you have a personal crisis and you have a different face. You're like, here's my public face. I am amazing. And then at home, you're just like, oh, fuck, I can't do this anymore. So you see some of these public profiles that seems like everything's great all the time. They're so amazing. Everything's great. But then you learn tragically that they took their life or that something's really wrong or they end up in rehab. And so that delta gets dangerous if you're branding somebody other than who you really are. And for me, that delta got to a point where I didn't feel like I was truly myself. And so if you start and you continue to share the quirky sides, the good, the bad, the ugly, and you put it all out there, then people will take that. They'll get to know you. Some of them might not like you. And there's plenty of people that are like not into my style, and that's okay. I'm not going to change my style to appease them. I'm going to continue with my style, and the people who dig me, they're going to check out my website. They're going to check out my Twitter. They're going to follow me, and we'll continue to have that relationship. So by building a personal brand, it's just letting people get to know you faster based on the information that they can find online.
I love it. And we have a few questions here from somebody we both know, Stoyan. I just wanted to basically ask an advice here. I'll start. What would be your advice for someone who's never been out there building a personal brand intentionally and sharing content on social? What's the first step would you recommend so they can start showing up as a vulnerable leader?
So just like anything, you have to define it before you build it. Okay. let's say we're going to build a castle. Okay, let's build a castle. Well, what kind of castle are we going to build? You can't build a castle without plans. You can't build something without knowing what's starting. And a lot of people end up doing the right things. They create content. They start a podcast. They have a blog. They speak. They volunteer. But if you do it in the wrong order, it doesn't necessarily work. And so the first thing you should do, if you're feeling brave and you want to get out there into the world, first, define who you are. And it's a simple but often overlooked step in the process. So I have a process in my book. In my book, Ditch the Act, there's a process called the rapid reflection discovery process. It's the first thing that you do. Here's the fun exercise. You take a Post-it note and you write down as many things as you want to be known for. So I want to be known as somebody who's high energy. I want to be known as somebody who's caring. I want to be somebody who's known as innovative. I want to be known as somebody who's this. This is what you want to be known for. Like at the heart of hearts, who are you? Then you go out there into the world and you ask your friends, your family, your coworkers, and you say, how would you describe me professionally, personality-wise, and what do you think I do for fun? So you gather those pieces of information, and now you have what other people think your brand is and what you want your brand to be. And there are going to be some overlaps. So let's say I want to be known as somebody who's funny, but nobody else in my friends, family, or coworker circles thinks of me as funny. Well, maybe that's not the best thing to start with. So when you decide what you want to be known for professionally, personally, and what you do, sort of like the way that you show up, you then can create the starting point. And so when you first decide that you want to be known as an innovator, you want to be known as high energy, and you love to sail, then those three things become the guide rails for the content that you create. Does this blog post share a story about me where I learned how to be innovative? When I'm on this podcast, am I going to talk about sailing? And when I show up, as a result, are people going to see and feel that high energy? So when you define what you want to be known for first, then you create content around it. The content you create helps to reinforce who you are. If, on the other hand, you just decide to, I'm going to write an article about this, I'm going to do a podcast about this, I'm going to post about this, it's going to be maybe more scattered, and people will be like, this person's all over the place. So just as we said in the very beginning, there's nothing more difficult than to make things simple. But the most difficult and most worthy step is to figure out what you want to be known for first, and then build content around it. And if you continue to build content around those core things for a long enough period of time, you'll come up in search engines for it. People will start to recognize you for it. They'll start to reach out to you. And I've done that with personal branding, with sailing, and with core communication. I have a podcast about sailing called Good Jibes. I have a podcast about communication with my 313 challenge. I have a podcast about speaking with World of Speakers. And so the content that I create is in line with what I want to be known for. And you do that over time, and you'll start to be known as a leader in that space because you keep coming up. And so that's what I would say is the first step. Figure out what you want to be known for.
And it's a great advice, Ryan, because that's so relevant, not only for the first phase of your life, which if we consider the learning phase, the first 25 years, if an average lifespan is 100, let's say, of the learning phase, is say, trying all these things and find out what you like, what you can do, won't do. And hopefully for the second phase, you can actually execute, but some people don't even know who they are, and that's not untypical or unnormal in some cases. They just didn't, I guess, have the process or the knowledge or intelligence. So thank you for sharing. This is a great value, and if it's in your book, I definitely want to go in deeper myself, to be honest, because we do a lot of young people and a lot of leaders, and I think we found it very helpful. So I recommend also to our listeners to take advantage of that methodology.
Look at what it says on the back. What does it say on the back?
Be human. It's the only way to get ahead in business today. Oh, fantastic. And I believe that. Honestly, I believe, because the time of the that selfish leadership or ruthless leadership is coming to an end. I mean,
that was the 80s.
If you don't care, I mean, at least in the Western world, I think you need to find somebody who cares in order to complement your blind spots or weaknesses. Otherwise, the talent is the new currency. And obviously, I've seen that since I've been operating in this field for more than 15 years. I'm really passionate about exceptionally gifted people, and what they're looking for is many things nowadays. But one of the first one, it comes, do you care? And what am I going to learn? What's your vision? Who is the team? But one of the major ones is, do you really care about making a positive difference, or is it just about you?
Right.
And
is it just talk, or are you actually taking action? Right. Because we can literally put on a filter, we can do whatever we want to ourselves, like here visually, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, yeah, what is it at the end of the day that you care about? And I'll add that. What is it that you want to be known for? And what do you care about? When you decide those two things, it can guide you on a path to not creating a personal brand. And maybe this is a good thing to sort of bring it all together. I'll ask people, do you have a personal brand? Many of them will say, nope. Everyone has a personal brand. If you don't think that you have one, it just means that you are not participating in your brand narrative. If I ask people who know me to describe me, they're going to describe me to what they know. That is effectively my brand. And so if you don't have a brand, it's just that you're not participating in the narrative. And you can always start. You can help to shape the brand that already exists in other people's minds to something that's more in line with your authentic self.
Ryan, what does caring leadership mean to you?
I think that caring leadership means that it's about them, not you. Because when your decisions are driven by ego and selfishness and what's in it for you, then you're really not caring about the people that are around you. So I think servant leadership, caring leadership is actually not just saying, I've got an open door policy, come and talk with me if you have any problems, but actually sharing with them, connecting with them, building a relationship with them so that when the doors open, they actually walk in the door. So caring means that you're also willing to share, because you can't expect an employee to come to you with some sort of challenge that they're having if you're not willing to talk with them about some challenge that you're having. And so caring leadership is caring enough to share that you're also human. You know, there's not this like I'm not here and you're not here. When you walk in that door, we are here together. I think that shows that you care.
Thank you. And it makes you absolutely, I concur with, as we think alike, a lot of the points you're sharing is just fantastic and it's so valuable. And it's just a simple reminder. It's simplicity, as you say, it's powerful. And when you bring it up in that words, it really makes how do you take care of yourself, Ryan? What are your...
I spend time on the ocean. I sail this weekend. I'm headed off. It's been a busy, fun, crazy week, but I'm headed off to go do some lobster diving. Love
that. Would love to meet you over a lobster.
When I have a chance, when I read, I've got different magazines. Like right here, if I've got a few minutes, I surround myself with things that I enjoy so that I can get, it's like an escape. For me, sailing and being on the water is an escape. And so yesterday I was working on my boat. This weekend I'm going to be on my boat. And again, it's something that I've found allows me to disconnect. I love to scuba dive. There's no reception underwater. I don't get email notifications when I'm underwater.
Well, technology allows it. Thank God you're not getting it.
But that's what I do. Nature is what recharges me.
Oh, fantastic. And by the way, that's the natural noises of nature, guys. I have actually experienced you detox of all the kind of waves, all the internet, all the lights. When you go in nature, we all need it. The sounds of the bees, the sounds of the flies, these are the things that are natural, that recharges, and the clean air. Well, it starts with the basics: clean water, clean air, clean food, I guess, and the clean thoughts, of course, very important. But just to wrap it up, and it's been fantastic, we're full of so much valuable stuff. I think we need to do like so many episodes, to like a 1 minute snippets, to break it down. I think there was just a lot of value in that episode. And final question: what is your vision for a brighter future? What would, like the same way you discovered this kind of rapid discovery process, you're thinking of what you want to be known for. What do you want the future to be for you? What's your vision for it?
So I have a story, quick story. I was hosting a large event, and part of the event, there was a raffle, and somebody was going to win a backpack. The person who won the raffle, as I read it off, was this little person who ended up being about 12 years old. Conference full of adults. This was the child of someone who was there, and he came up on stage, and I recognized him as being behind a booth with one of the people that were displaying for the conference. And he had a company that he started called Do Good, Be Kind. And what I did is he was up there on stage, and I said, hey, congratulations, clap, clap, clap. Now I saw you have a business out there. Can you share with us how you started your business? I handed to this microphone to this 12-year-old, and I go off stage, and he's in front of hundreds of people. And he shares a story about how when he was at school, a lot of people would make fun of him. And he'd come home and he'd cry and he'd tell his parents, and he said, I don't understand why people just don't be nicer. Like, why don't they just do good and be kind to each other? And so he decided to make a t-shirt. Said, do good, be kind. And he wore it to school like a little brave 12-year-old. And people were like, whoa, that's cool. And so he started making more t-shirts and stickers, and he started his whole business, Do Good, Be Kind. And I saw myself in his story because I was that 12-year-old. I didn't start a company about doing good, being kind, but knowing how that affected me, and knowing how that was just like, it was the hurt that you feel when people aren't nice, or they're not kind, or they're not doing good, and seeing all these things that are happening in the world when there's just people are doing bad things. My vision for the future is simple. Do good, be kind. Both of those things are free. And I think that if we could all do more good and be kind, less 12-year-olds will have a hard time in middle school. Less adults will have hard time dealing with the struggles that we all deal with. And we can just all be there for each other. So I have the kids sticker on my desk. I have it on the back of my card. I have it on my iPad. And I'm constantly reminding myself that that's the vision. Just do good and be kind. It doesn't cost anything.
Love it, Ryan. And thank you so much, sincerely, for all this value and sharing your experience. It's been fantastic. Wishing you wishing you a good lobster hunting. Hopefully
Yes,
you can get like a few of them. And,
well, we get 7 is a daily limit, so I'm going 7 is good. That'll put us good for a while. But yeah,
all right. Wishing you 7 lobsters that you're gonna enjoy with people you love and you care about, and of course you spread that goodness. And I'm very optimistic about the future. There's a lot of goodness coming. I love how you simplify it. It's just be good and be kind. It's just a fantastic thing, and do good things. A lot of things are coming. So God bless you, Ryan. Thank you so much. You and your family keep spreading that, and it's been fantastic having you today.
Awesome. And if anybody wants to connect or continue the conversation, I'm easy to find online. You go to Ryan.online. That's it.
Ryan.online. Well, that's easy to find.
It's
Excellent.
easy to find. That's me online. Thanks. This is I really enjoyed this conversation, and it's refreshing to see conversations around how we can care for each other. And I think it's a worthwhile conversation. So I like to see that I'm 63, and I'm excited to see the numbers just continue.
Absolutely. I'm very excited about some of the books well, the new books that I will be writing, because I'm sure you won't stop there.
Yeah, I got my next book in my brain. It's ready.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to check out some of the ones you've shared already. Fantastic, and a lot of value. Keep spreading that around. That is just a great service, and I honor the work you do. And thank you so much.
You're welcome, buddy. Good to be here.
Take care.